All right, let's get right into this. We're about to explore one of the greatest stories of human exploration ever told. And this isn't a story that happens on land. Oh no. It unfolds across the biggest, most empty space on our entire planet, the Pacific Ocean.
So, just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're dealing with, picture the Polynesian Triangle. It's this huge slice of the globe, right? It connects Hawaii way up in the north, New Zealand down in the southwest, and Easter Island, Rapa Nui, way out in the southeast. And we're not talking about neighboring islands here. These are tiny, little specks of land separated by thousands of kilometers of open and often really rough ocean.
And that brings us to the big mystery, doesn't it? How did they pull it off? I mean, no compasses, no GPS, not a single modern instrument, just wooden canoes and incredible human ingenuity. How did they manage to find and colonize an area of the planet that European explorers, centuries later, struggled with, even with all their advanced technology?
To figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock, and not just by a few centuries. We're talking about going back millennia. The very first clues to this incredible puzzle are buried in an ancient migration that started long before anyone even thought about pointing a canoe towards the deep Pacific.
You know, thanks to modern linguistics and genetics, we can actually trace the origins of all Polynesian peoples back to a pretty surprising place, Taiwan. It's from right here that Austronesian-speaking peoples kicked off one of the most important migrations in all of human history.
Now, this wasn't just a single trip. It was this epic, multi-generational island-hopping journey. You can almost think of it like an express train moving across the ocean. Around 2000 BC, they push into places like the Philippines and Indonesia. Then, by 1400 BC, this really distinct culture we call the Lapita shows up near New Guinea. And by 900 BC, bam, they've made it to what was then the edge of the known world, settling the islands of Tonga and Samoa.
And these Lapita people, they are absolutely essential to our story. They are the direct ancestors of the Polynesians. We call them Lapita because of this really unique stamped pottery they left behind. But more importantly, they were the ones who really perfected the technology and the skills you'd need to make these incredible leaps into the total unknown.
So, our Lapita explorers have made it to Western Polynesia. They've settled Tonga and Samoa, and then the expansion just stops. For a really, really long time. They're basically standing on the doorstep of this vast, empty Eastern Pacific, and for centuries, they don't go any further.
And when I say a long time, I am not kidding. Just try to imagine a pause in exploration that lasts for 1,000 years. But this wasn't a period of stagnation, not at all. This was a millennium of consolidation. It was in this homeland of Tonga and Samoa that a uniquely Polynesian culture was forged. The language, the social structures, the beliefs, everything that would fuel the next great leap.
Then, around the year 1000 AD, something shifts. The long pause is over. A new generation of explorers armed with 1,000 years of cultural and technological know-how turns their canoes to the east and just sails out into the void. This was it, the final and by far the most daring phase of their expansion.
What is just mind-blowing is how fast this final push happened. Using high-precision radiocarbon dating, scientists now think it wasn't a slow trickle. Instead, it was two distinct, explosive pulses of colonization. The first one, in the 11th century, settled the central hub, the Society Islands, like Tahiti. Then, about a century later, a second pulse just radiates out from there, reaching the most remote corners of the Pacific in only a few generations. Incredible.
And that incredible speed brings us right back to our main question. How on earth did they do it? How did they navigate with such pinpoint accuracy to find these tiny little targets in the world's biggest ocean? Well, the answer is this amazing combination of brilliant technology and an almost unbelievable understanding of the natural world.
Okay, first let's talk about the hardware. The absolute key was their incredible technology, the double-hulled voyaging canoe. These things weren't just boats. They were basically floating islands. They were stable, they were fast, and they were big enough to carry everything they needed for a new life. People, plants, animals. They were the spaceships of the Pacific.
But of course, the most sophisticated ship in the world is totally useless if you don't know where you're going. The real genius of Polynesian exploration wasn't just the canoe itself, but the mind of the navigator who is guiding it.
They developed this incredibly complex system of navigation called wayfinding. And let me be clear, this was not guesswork, it was a science.
These navigators memorized the exact rising and setting points of hundreds of stars. They could read these subtle patterns in the ocean swells and actually detect how they bent around islands that were hundreds of kilometers away. They followed birds, they watched clouds. They could literally feel their direction in the waves beneath them.
If you want any proof of just how sophisticated this was, look no further than a man named Tupaya. When Captain Cook arrived in Tahiti, he met this master navigator, and Tupaya, just from memory, drew a chart for Cook showing every major island group within a 3,200-kilometer radius. Think about that. A mental map of the Pacific held in the mind of one person. It's just breathtaking.
So they did it. They conquered the Pacific. But what happened after that? What kind of societies did they build on all these scattered islands? Well, what happened next was this fascinating explosion of cultural diversity, all sprouting from a single common ancestor. Just think about the incredible variety that popped up. On the one hand, you have the haunting Moai statues of Rapa Nui, this testament to incredible ambition on one of the most isolated chunks of rock on Earth. And on the other, you have the intricate, powerful carvings of the Māori of New Zealand. Both are unmistakably Polynesian, yet they're completely unique, each one shaped by the challenges and opportunities of their new homes. Now, if you zoom out, you can kind of see a split between the older cultures in West Polynesia and the newer ones out in the East. The West, having been settled for much longer, developed societies that were built for high populations, with complex legal systems and trading traditions. But out East, the cultures adapted to smaller, more isolated islands, and that's what led to that spectacular diversity in art and social structures we were just looking at.
So let's pull it all together. When you think about it, from a small island off the coast of Asia to the absolute farthest corners of the world's biggest ocean, it is a journey that just defies belief.
You know, when you look back at the whole thing, the timeline, the technology, the sheer scale of the distances they crossed, there is no other way to put it. The settlement of Polynesia is, without a doubt, one of the greatest feats of exploration our species has ever accomplished. This was a planned, systematic, and brilliantly executed discovery of a third of the Earth's surface.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In our age, where we rely on satellites just to tell us where we are, what can we learn from a people who found their way by reading the stars and feeling the sea? What does this ancient story of courage, resilience, and profound environmental knowledge have to teach us right now?